Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia. I went on Reddit and I looked at some of your unpopular Jane Austen opinions. So let's get judgy, bitches. That sounded incredibly unnatural and I apologize. These are all from r/Jane Austen, so this is all opinions shared by fans of Jane Austen. People who love Jane Austen enough to join a subreddit all about Jane Austen. Yes, I am one of those people. And I suspect, since you're watching this video, so are you nerd. In the course of this video, expect spoilers for all of Jane Austen's novels. I'm not promising spoilers, but I can't guarantee there won't be any. Let's see what unpopular things people have to share about their favorite writer. I love everything about Mansfield Park except for reading it. I appreciate so much of what it does, but I never ever feel like returning to it. It's a slog, uncompelling, but it's brilliant and skewering and full of interesting characters you love to hate. Did I write this in another life? Because that is very much my opinion of Mansfield Park. Yes, it's interesting. It's so different from Jane Austen's other novel. It has all of these fascinating themes and topics. Unfortunately, themes and topics don't do it for me when it comes to enjoying a book. And I'm sorry to say I belong to the class of Mansfield Park haters. I know there are many of us. I know it's quite mainstream, which also means that this unpopular opinion isn't actually all that unpopular. I feel like it's quite a common one shared by many Jane Austen readers that Mansfield Park just doesn't do it for us. Now, funnily enough, there is a lot of people that Mansfield Park really does it for. A lot of people name Mansfield Park as one of their favorite Jane Austen books. It's definitely a Marmite kind of a book. You either love it or hate it. And unfortunately, I hate it, despite all the things it does incredibly well. Let's remember that Mansfield Park is probably the most overt in talking about class, for example, in Jane Austen's books. It is the only one that even touches on the slave trade. It's got so many fascinating themes. It's got so many morally grey characters that are interesting to follow. And yet, just like this person said on Reddit, it's a slog and uncompelling. This one's also about Mansfield Park. I have a feeling we'll see a few unpopular opinions about that particular Jane Austen novel. Mansfield Park is too short. It doesn't have any of the romance scenes that any other book has, where the main couple kind of talk and dissect their romance. And honestly, I feel a little cheated. I think I would like Edmund more if I could see him feeling unsure about Fanny loving him or apologizing to her. Yes and no. A big fat no to the statement Mansfield Park is too short. If there's one thing Mansfield Park most certainly isn't, it's too short. In fact, it could have easily done with 100 fewer pages. Yes, I said it. 100 fewer pages would have improved Mansfield Park immensely. Now, as for the romance, I kind of concur with this person in that the romance feels shoehorned in to the end with no real development of it. Mansfield Park has a romance plot because books in that period of time had to have a romance happy ending if they wanted a satisfying happy ending for the morally upright heroine. Fanny Price is the epitome of the morally upright heroine. She is not morally grey like Emma. She is your typical girl who deserves better. And unfortunately, for a girl who deserves better to have what she deserves, that includes a husband. And that's what Jane Austen gave her. It's sad it had to be Edmund Bertram, the blandest, most boring, most unimpressive man ever to marry a Jane Austen heroine. Yes, he's worse than Edward Ferrars by a bit. He's all priest and no hotness. Fanny Price could do so much better, honestly. So, if this book had to have a romance, and in the context of the time it had to have a romance, I would have liked for Jane Austen to make that a bit more central in the story. Now, what I would have preferred is no romance at all. I would have liked to see the plot with Henry Crawford work out the way it did. His attempted seduction of Fanny Price, I think, is the most fun part of Mansfield Park. So I would have liked to see that happen just as it does in the book. And then for her not to marry Henry Crawford at the end, but also not to marry Edmund Bertram. Sadly, that's a very 21st century expectation to put on a 19th century book, and I am fully aware of that. I would rather chew off my own hand than spend an hour with Miss Bates. Ooh, I like Miss Bates. Not just I pity her, I find her genuinely funny. So I do not agree with this opinion. I think Miss Bates would actually be hilarious to hang out with for an hour. I might have to chew off my own hand before spending a second hour with her. Ooh, this one's about Pride and Prejudice. The person most responsible for Bingley leaving Jane is Jane. Ooh, now we're getting into unpopular opinion territory. Implicitly, what she and Elizabeth are expecting is that this stranger will show up, court her, and get all the way to proposing marriage with no encouragement. Almost any sensible person would have advised him against pursuing Jane because of her apparent lack of interest in him. Indeed, a less impulsive Bingley never would have gotten that far. Interesting. I've got to say, I hadn't considered the Bingley and Jane relationship from that angle. This person's basically saying, you know what, Darcy was absolutely right in encouraging his friend to distance himself from Jane because she gave him no encouragement. Do I agree with it? No, and I'll tell you why. A single lady of the genteel classes in Jane Austen's time was definitely not encouraged to encourage a gentleman. And we see that play out, for example, with Lydia Bennet, with Marianne Dashwood, where girls and women who are too overt in their encouragement suffer the consequences of that. That is the big message that Jane Austen is sending us through these characters. So hashtag Jane did nothing wrong. She didn't grow up to encourage a man, and because she is a good person in the context of the book, she doesn't encourage a man. We see Elizabeth behaving in exactly the same way. She doesn't encourage Darcy at all until right at the very end when she finds out what he's done for her sister, and she tells him in no uncertain terms, listen dude, if you're still into me, let's do it. So I disagree that Jane is at fault for Bingley losing interest in her because he is being persuaded by Darcy. I think Bingley deserves a lot more blame for being an absolutely spineless, thoughtless bastard who takes relationship advice from his perpetually single asshole friend Darcy. Here we have a popular opinion about Sense and Sensibility. The sisters in Sense and Sensibility are both annoying. They somehow both deserve and don't deserve the boring men they end up with. The men in Sense and Sensibility are definitely not of the quality that some of the other Jane Austen novels provide. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say Colonel Brandon. And I want you in your mind to detach Colonel Brandon from Alan Rickman. Detach yourself from Hugh Grant's portrayal of Edward Ferrars. What have we got? We have another spineless bastard who lets everyone else around him dictate what he's supposed to be into. That's Edward Ferrars. And we have a kindly, nice, loving, but ultimately a bit dull, middle-aged man. And I know that Colonel Brandon isn't like our modern definition of middle-aged. He's what, in his mid-30s. But still, we have a kindly, middle-aged man taking a weird interest in an impulsive 17-year-old. I disagree that Marianne and Eleanor are annoying. I don't find them annoying at all. We have Eleanor, the reserved one. We have Marianne, the impulsive one. But I feel like they both could have done a lot better than what they got in Sense and Sensibility. Both Darcy and Lizzie could have done better. Fuck off. This unpopular opinion just reads, I am excessively fond of a cottage, as am I. In particular, if you consider that what counts as a cottage in a Sense and Sensibility context would probably sell for like £1.5 million today. Oh, there we have another Sense and Sensibility opinion. Colonel Brandon is a creep. A veteran in his mid-30s in a flannel waistcoat mooning over a 17-year-old girl? No. And don't try and pull that "it was a different time" nonsense. You just love Alan Rickman. I'll show myself back out. So I might have said those exact things just a few minutes ago, and yet reading that now, I feel the strange urge to defend Colonel Brandon. To be fair, I think, and this is not an opinion I have about a lot of Jane Austen marriages, but I think Brandon and Marianne are profoundly mismatched. I don't subscribe to the popular take that he would have done better ending up with Eleanor, because even though we see a lot of really wonderful scenes of a developing friendship in Sense and Sensibility, I don't really sense any chemistry between them. But, oh god, I'm trying so hard to disagree with this, but deep down, this person's actually right. I'm sorry. Ooh, here we have one about Emma. Emma is bi. I don't know if this is a hot take exactly, but as a bi woman, I feel like she gives really strong bi vibes. Is it just me? She spends a lot of time talking about how hot Harriet is. I'm not saying she liked her romantically, but... headcanon accepted. I think Isabella Thorpe is kind of a girl boss. I'm currently almost done with Northanger Abbey, although I know the 19th century held different views of what a girl boss is. Isabella Thorpe is one of Jane Austen's mean girls, like Caroline Bingley, like Mrs. Elton, like Mary Crawford. There's a lot of them in Jane Austen's books, and I love them all. I think they're all girl bosses, and all the things that she criticizes about them are things that we today celebrate women for, or at least I feel like we should celebrate women for, which is getting what they want and going against what society expects them to be. So I kind of agree with this. However, Isabella Thorpe is also a terrible friend. Look at how she's treating poor Catherine. Not to mention how she's treating poor James Morland. She is ruthless and cold, and she is a bad bitch, but she could have done all of that without being literally the worst friend. She might be a girl boss, but she is not a girl's girl. Mary and Mr. Collins would have made a terrible couple and would have made each other really miserable. Yes, thank you. So many people, and I see this all over my comment section, are of the opinion clearly that Mr. Collins should have proposed to and married Mary Bennet. Why? Because he's a priest and she likes the Bible. That is not a good basis for a relationship. Mr. Collins needs someone with a lot of patience, and Mary Bennet is not that. And there are hints in Pride and Prejudice that she might have been open to marrying him, but I agree with this person in saying that they would have made each other miserable, and sooner or later Mary Bennet would have gone on a killing spree, murdering Mr. Collins, Lady Catherine, and poor Anderburg. This is an opinion not about the books, but about a film adaptation. The 1995 movie Sense and Sensibility had great actors in it, but Emma Thompson, Hugh Grant, Alan Rickman and Greg Wise were far too old to play Eleanor, Edward Cullen Brandel and Willoughby. Yes and no. I actually talk a lot about the Sense and Sensibility movie in a video I made about why accuracy in film adaptations isn't as important as we sometimes make it out to be. Because the 1995 movie of Sense and Sensibility is not accurate to the book. Not just in terms of plot, but also in terms of characterization. For example, in the film Sense and Sensibility, Edward Ferrars has a personality, which he definitely doesn't in the book. Making all of these characters older, in particular making Eleanor Dashwood older, I think is a stroke of genius. And not just because Emma Thompson is an incredible performer, but because having her be in her late 20s, early 30s gives that sense of desperation to a modern audience that we probably wouldn't feel for a 19-year-old who can't find a husband. For Eleanor Dashwood in the film, time is kind of running out because she is still living with her mother and sisters while being a fully grown woman, and you can sense her desperation for a life of her own, for independence from her family, that you don't get if you cast someone closer to the book in terms of ages. Yes, Alan Rickman is way too old to play Colonel Brandon, but he's Alan Rickman. Pride and Prejudice is overrated in comparison to Austen's other novels. Fuck off. Bingley had no backbone and Jane should have made him work for it before she accepted his hand. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Finger guns, yes. 100%. I can see why she didn't, because she's Jane Bingley and unlike Elizabeth, she doesn't get a proposal every 3 chapters in this book. So I understand why she didn't, but I really hope he grovelled. Mansfield Park is supposed to be a funny book. Says who? What do you mean supposed to be? If it's supposed to be a funny book, it failed. Jane Austen isn't as feminist as people want her to portray. I think this is supposed to say as people want to portray her. Just because a woman wrote books in that time doesn't mean she or her works are feminist. Yes, I agree with this a lot. We tend to retcon Jane Austen into being this great proto-feminist writer. And that's based on what? That she was a woman who wrote books about women? While most of the women in Jane Austen's time weren't writers, most writers in Jane Austen's time were women, in particular writers of novels. So she wasn't bucking a trend in being a female novelist, not by a long shot. And there isn't really anything about her books that are inherently feminist, unless you are of the opinion that merely someone writing a book about women and women's perspective is feminist. I adore Jane Austen's writing. She was groundbreaking in so many ways, but gender politics is not one of them. And it does bother me when I see people praise her for feminist credentials she simply doesn't have. Jane Austen deserves all the praise she gets. She is not overrated. She is rated just rightly as one of the groundbreaking writers in all of Western literature. But she was not a girl boss. And I wish we'd consider the historical context a little bit more before we made those kind of statements. Incidentally, if you want more of my hot takes on Jane Austen as a feminist, you should watch a video I did called Jane Austen for Men, in which I consider the gender split in Jane Austen's readership. And you should also keep an eye out for the video that's coming out next week, which is a video essay discussing the commercialization of Jane Austen and the modern Jane Austen fandom. That one's coming out Friday next week. You can also join my memberships if you want to see that and all other videos a day earlier than they are released. With that little bit of self-promotion over, do let me know your unpopular Jane Austen opinions. Maybe I'll do another video at some point sharing mine. Although I feel like my opinions on Jane Austen are fairly mainstream, so I'm not sure that would make for great content. Anyway, thank you for joining me this video and judging. And thank you to everyone on Reddit who shared their unpopular opinions. I'll put a link to the Jane Austen subreddit in the description box. But most of all, thank you for watching. Bye!